Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fall edition of O365Eh. So on today's episode, we're joined with Microsoft MVP Dominick Raimato, and we're going to talk Copilot adoption and Copilot analytics. And I've seen some of the Copilot analytics that Dominick has homegrown. They're fantastic, so I'm looking forward to discussing it. Dominick, why don't you just introduce yourself to the crowd and tell us what your role is and some of the things you've been doing with Copilot adoption and analytics.
Absolutely. So Dominick Raimato, I am not Canadian, unfortunately. I live down in the United States. I'm just outside of New York City, but welcome. Really glad that you welcomed me in. I've been working in data primarily for about 10 years in and out of different roles, but recently took on a role to lead our data, AI, and adoption change management practices at a company called SHI, based here in the United States. My team is really well versed in helping organizations get the value out of Copilot, and that's really what I think has been the biggest challenge that so many organizations are struggling with: is how do I know people are using Copilot, and how do I actually show the growth? And frustrated for years about it, but being a data person, you have to be persistent and find a way. So started off really crude back in the day with some CSV files, but luckily Microsoft about this time last year released an API endpoint that we're able to use that allows us to go query that data straight out of the Microsoft Graph repository. And we can now take a look at Copilot adoption. We can look at Microsoft 365 adoption even, and get a little better feel for what people are doing with the platform. So all using Microsoft Fabric, and I try to make it so easy that anybody should be able to do it. So if you just follow some instructions, you'd be able to deploy it yourself. You don't have to be a data guru. You don't need to know all the AI things. You just need to be able to create a service principal, deploy a couple things in Fabric, and you're off to the races.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, let's just cover the data sources that are used in your, we'll call it an application. Is it 100% graph? Is that where it's pulling the analytics from?
100%. So we're leveraging what we have available to us. Most of it is the Microsoft Graph reporting endpoints. So for a long time, we've had these different endpoints. I think you probably all use them for Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, all that stuff. And then they released these Copilot ones, but there was a small problem with the Copilot ones. You don't give me counts. Everything else, how many meetings did you schedule? How many meetings did you attend? How many chats did you send? How many emails do you get? We get numbers. But with Copilot, it just simply said, well, when's the last time you used it?
Right.
That's a little frustrating, right? So what we did was we said, hey, we can still pull the data. We just have to manipulate it a little bit differently. And we're just looking to be able to see, did you use Copilot this week? And are you using it week over week? So it's not a perfect system. I think you guys all know with Microsoft Graph, the availability of the data is sometimes a little funky. I've seen this multiple times where the data is available in Teams, from Teams from the 28th, but OneDrive or SharePoint might not be until the 26th. So there's a little bit of gaps in the data. So we have to navigate around some challenges and things like that, but it's 100% using those reporting endpoints. But we also bring in the user endpoint as well, because there's a lot of metadata available to us. So for example, what department somebody might sit in, maybe you have a job family, office location, especially if you're a global organization. So it allows us to just provide a little bit more dimensional information around the organization as well. Just helps us identify a little bit better what people are doing and get a better feel for adoption across the board.
Yeah, and I suppose once you have that richer metadata all in Fabric in this case, you can just sort of slice and dice it as it makes sense for your organization to measure the engagement and growth, right?
Yeah, exactly. I had one organization, their departments were really weird. They had preceding numbers. So, for example, like the finance department was showing up over like 12 different departments. It was odd. I can't remember why they did it. There was some reason for it. So we actually built something that allowed them to look at it by executive leaders as well. So we could actually look at who their C-level executive was that they rolled up to, or one level below that, and even their managers as well. So it just gives us a little bit more opportunities to look at that dimensional information.
No, that's great. Well, I have a bunch of questions, starting with permissions, but why don't we show the solution in action here, and we just I'll
Yeah,
take a look at it.
yeah, absolutely. So let me share my screen here. All righty. All right, so everyone should be able to see it. So the solution was designed to be really easy and templatized for everyone. So the first thing we do need to have in place is a service principal, and the service principal needs to have access to a couple of different things. Notably, the reports endpoint needs to have access to your user endpoint, so that way we can get the data out that we're looking for and show the reporting. Once we've done that, all we have to do is get a little bit of work to prep the environment. So I deployed a lakehouse, simple, new item, create the lakehouse. And then I have this little Fabric notebook here. And when I jump in here using the little PySpark, I go create all my tables. And if you take a look here, this one, if you see here, is for teams. I should have zoomed in for everyone there. You can see that you have the standard fields that you would expect to see whenever you're working with endpoint. Specifically, this is the Teams reporting endpoint here. So, right, we've got last activity dates, we've got is the user deleted, what the counts are, things of that nature. And it goes through and just creates all those tables for us. So just takes a couple of moments to run, but it gets all the data repositories structured and in place so that way we're ready to go.
So you have a PySpark notebook, which basically is creating the Lakehouse schema to hold all the data.
Exactly. So the schema is ready to go. You don't need to know how to do it. It's just put in place, right? And once we've got that, we're going to use a data flow to be able to bring that data in. So I'm a big Power Query guy. I'm a huge fan of it. I love it for the low code, no code experience. So I understand that a lot of people that are deploying Copilot, they might be more modern work experts. They're not necessarily data experts. So instead of trying to do scripts or anything like that, we thought this might be a really easy way for us to go through and help calculate things out. So I use the data flow for a couple of things. Number one is to ingest the data that I want to use, but also add some scoring to the information as well. So for example, if I go look at my Teams user activity for a moment, and I scroll out, you've got different things like the counts and things of that nature. But one thing we did that was a little interesting here, a little different, is that we started to create these little columns here around scoring. So what we did is we started to look and we said, okay, what behaviors would we say indicate that you are an individual collaborator? Which ones would show that you're more of a team collaborator, or which ones are showing that you're more of an influencer? So for example, if all you do is send everything in your private chats in your OneDrive, you may be using the tools, but you're not using them well. You're an individual collaborator. But as you start to move into the more shared spaces, you start using things like Microsoft Teams, the actual channels, post in there, start sharing documents and editing them in SharePoint, and even getting into Viva Engage, we're showing a couple things. Number one, that you use the tools as designed, and as a result, those around you will have the benefit of your influence on them. Essentially, if I'm the one that's sharing all this information into a shared space and you're all part of that team, you'll be able to access it and be able to view it and provide and get value out of the results. On the flip side, if none of us are doing that, you're not going to have really great experience. So we know that. We're able to notice that. The other thing is that if you're willing to use all these different tools and try them and start to adopt them, you're probably going to be the right person to help adopt Copilot long-term as well, because you have that interest, you're willing to jump in there and be active in the platform. And as a result, we think you're just going to be a better user overall. So we use that to be able to quantify some of those results. And then all I do is I just port that over into my lakehouse and I just drop it in those tables that I created. So each one lines up to the appropriate field, and it'll just pump that data in. We just simply append that data every week when this report runs. So looking at Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Viva Engage data for your actual utilization of the platform. And then under Copilot, I've got something similar, but I'm looking at it in two ways. Number one is I'm looking at how are you using the different flavors of Copilot, right? Word, Excel, Teams, etc. But then also, just in general, when was the last time you used it? So we can at least start to get a little bit more of an idea. Are you just using it once, or are you using it through multiple platforms or multiple aspects of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem? So I just saw some hands up here. So Michael, I think you're first.
I was just wondering, so you mentioned building out a lake house and stuff. Like, what is the Power BI licensing kind of around these different features that you're leveraging?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there's two components. Number one is you would need at least a Power BI Pro license to be able to deploy this. So if you're an E5 customer or A5 or G5, depending on what your tenant situation might be, you would be in good shape, or you would have to at least have a Power BI Pro license to get this going. There is a Fabric licensing component to this. You would need a Fabric capacity, but I can assure you that this is pretty lightweight. So if you're not an organization that's leveraging Fabric today, you could get away with probably an F2 capacity, which is the smallest and the cheapest option. That'll allow you to run the jobs, refresh the data, and be able to do the reporting and keep it pretty low on the price point. But if you already are using Fabric, this is an easy job that you could just slip in on a weekly basis. So that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Habib, so you have a question.
Yeah, so I got a couple actually. So first one would be, is it like a manual refresh of the data depending on, or is it like a scheduled refresh on the sort of the time horizon that you're looking for?
Well, so it is scheduled. So what I do is I actually take I do a weekly refresh. I usually set it for Monday morning because we know the graph data is a little bit behind. So I feel like I can get a better picture of last week. If I could do it on Monday morning, I probably have data through Friday by that point. So I usually schedule it for Monday morning. And what I do is I actually take the last 30 days worth of activity, and then I average it out over 4 weeks. So essentially just trying to get a little bit more of a blend, because if you take vacation, and you Canadians are probably much better taking vacation than Americans, I hope. It's like, I'm always connected. I'm always having to check email, respond to messages, right? But if somebody's truly out of office and unable to work, we should see their utilization drop. So it just helps us smooth out that analysis a little bit for us.
Okay. And then my second question is that what permissions are assigned, or what graph permissions are assigned to the service principal? And is it running as delegated, or is it an app, or is it running an application?
Good question. So it's reports read all and user read all, and they are application permissions. So once you have that all set, you could just simply update your tenant GUID, application ID, and application secret right in here, and then the data will populate for you. It's that easy. And I've got a template that allows you, as you go to deploy the data flow, you could just apply the Power Query template, load in those 3 values, and hit refresh, and you're all set.
Awesome.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and publish that later, so that way it doesn't mess anything up here. But you can see I've got my data loaded in. So now I just simply have a report that allows us to take a look at what's going on. So let me give you a little bit of a tour here of what we've got going on, because there's a lot happening all at once. But essentially, this is split into a couple of different areas. So right here is our Copilot activity report. It allows us to look at a number of things. Number one is allows us to get a quick snapshot of what last week looked like within our tenant. So with the numbers that we have here, roughly a quarter of people used Copilot last week. You have about half the organization have not used Copilot recently. I do have one that also looks to see, did you use it? Maybe not last week, but the prior week. And then people that have never used Copilot at all. So this is a demo test tenant that we use for training and things like that. So you're seeing a little bit low utilization here, but we can start to see not only what does it look like last week, which is what you look at right now today in the admin portal, but it allows you to dig in and see what those trends look like over time. So we can start to see, are they increasing? Are they slowing down? Allows us to see if people are starting to take advantage of the tools and just using them as planned. So it gives us not only the snapshot in time, but because we're capturing it week over week, we can see the trend. We can also look by application for the previous week. We can see that Copilot Chat was leading the way, but we've got a little bit of interaction with a couple of other tools there. And we can also get really detailed and look at very specific applications. So for example, let's say your organization was doing a real push for Copilot for Outlook. We can actually go filter that right there and see how's it going with that Outlook experience. Are people using it? Are they not? And be able to get a little bit more context on what's happening in the environment. The other thing we look at here is the collaboration score. And this is the other piece that I was telling you about that helps us understand. Now, once again, this is more of a training demo tenant, so we don't have everyone, but you can see here the score is out of 100, and the higher the score, the better the collaborator they are. We can actually also look at it by department and see what the average score is by department to also identify where there may be some hotspots. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a blend of, okay, who's really using the platform, and then who's actually using Microsoft or Copilot for Microsoft 365. Yes, Dino.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dominic. Thank you. I guess my question is, so it's great customers deploy this. So I'm curious, for those that you've deployed this for, maybe internally or other customers, or I don't know, feedback you've got. I'm assuming you've published this and it's available for anybody to go and deploy.
Of course.
What are they doing with the data? Like, are they removing Copilot licenses if they're not using it? Are they doing some training? Like, I guess I'd be interested in exploring how they're using this data once they've figured out, okay, well, John's and Deborah's not using Copilot. Like, do we go train her? Do we remove the license to save some money? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah. So what I've found is the best users or the best leveragers of this report are doing a couple things. Number one, they're looking for your active Copilot users, which leads us right here. So if I see somebody who's really active in Copilot with a really high collaboration score and they're using a lot of apps, there's somebody I want to go take some time and have a conversation with them. So let's say it's you, Dino, like, hey, what are you using Copilot for? It helps us just drive better use case development and things like that as we start to manage the change. Potentially, if you're doing a communication strategy, take your use cases and share them out with the organization. On the other side, we look at the inactive users, and some people are just like, hey, just take it away if they're not using it. I think that's the wrong approach. Maybe eventually, but if I have somebody that has never used Copilot or they're not using it a lot and they have a particularly high collaboration score, I want to have a real conversation with them. Why aren't you using it? What's the challenge? What's not working the way you expected? And see if that's actually a training touch point, because that helps me understand where the blockers are and where I can better communicate training within the organization as a whole. Also, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Copilot sucks, it's the worst, nobody likes it, blah, 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 which I'm sure we've all heard somebody tell us that, and I go look at their score and they've got a 10, you just kind of brush off their feedback, right? It's not really valid. They're not really using the tools, and of course they're not going to use Copilot or get the best experience with Copilot. So it just gives us a little bit better picture of what's going on and allows us to think about it as a whole. Habib.
Yeah. So, Dom, I'm not sure if you've ever been asked this or worked with an organization, but have you ever worked with any companies that redact the user information, like so you can't see their names and stuff like that? And how do you aggregate the data in those type of situations?
Yeah, so that could be the challenge right there. So there's a couple things we can do. Number one is that we can turn off that setting in the admin center, which is what I suggest people do. If that is not an option, you have to look at building essentially the keys that would allow you to bring that data together. So one of the most powerful components of everything is being able to link my dimensional data around department use and office locations and things like that to this data. So, I mean, we could do it headless style and be able to still get the analysis of who's using the tools and who's not using the tools, but you lose all the dimensional pieces. So you have to create at least some type of key system that would allow you to bridge the user data out of Microsoft 365 or out of Entra ID specifically to the Microsoft 365 data. So I feel like feel like some people look at this and they go, "Oh, well, so and so's not using this tool really well." Like, I think we have to get past that. You have to be able to be okay with saying, "Hey, you know, you need to be able to report on this," because we're trying to understand what true adoption looks like across the board. If we don't have that, we're never going to be able to capture if we're going to anonymize all the data, right? We'll never go find the little pockets and the people that could be getting the more value because, you know, we've hidden the link that brings the that key dimension of like department or location to allow us to go help them. So you have to kind of balance the two.
Yeah, and Dominic, I'm curious. I really like this concept of looking at the activity in the other M365 workloads to sort of gauge Copilot engagement. In your work with various organizations, have you found this and that concept to be a good gauge of how useful someone will be at using Copilot?
Yeah, I think it has. It's proven very valuable. I mean, we're finding it the top tier users of the platform, of the Microsoft 365 platform as a whole. They are really adopting this. They're getting the most value. I think what's also interesting is that it's also helped us identify where there's been challenges. So return to office seems to be the new fad right behind AI. Now everyone wants you to go back to the office. You know what's the biggest danger to AI right now in this space with Copilot is RTO. Because if we can have conversations at the coffee station or as we're walking to and from a conference room meeting or heading out to lunch, those conversations aren't memorialized. They're not tracked and captured inside of something like Teams or SharePoint. We maybe made a decision. Curtis, you and I, Habib, we went to get shawarma, right? We don't get to, yeah, right? Yeah. We don't get a chance, though, because of that. We went to lunch, we had a conversation, but nobody came back and wrote it down inside of Teams. And as a result, that information is lost. So it does give us actually an opportunity to be able to look at this and say, is there a gap potentially taking place because we are not paying attention to this and we need to, maybe change some of that behavior. Not saying we have to record everything that we do, but making sure that we're at least memorializing the things that are important so that way we can come back and reference them again in the future.
No, that makes sense. If someone wants to deploy this, are the artifacts available on your website?
Absolutely. Just so happens awesome. I have it up and loaded. So
nice.
It's a 3-part series on my blog, datawithdom.com, and make sure you guys have the link that we can put in the video here. But this has everything step by step. It has a link to my GitHub repo that has all the artifacts, the report template, the Power Query template, and the notebook to deploy the schema for the lakehouse. All you have to do is just follow the instructions. I find it takes about an hour to get it done when I've worked with people and helped them guide them through this. So maybe a little bit faster for some of you if you like to speed run through this stuff. Some people like to take their time and actually understand what they're deploying, but I would say about an hour and a half, you should be able to get it deployed and in place for yourself.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm sure you're familiar with this, Dom. It pays to start at least gathering the data now so that if you want to report on it 6 months from now, it's there. So,
well, yeah, I think that's the biggest miss for so many organizations. They're already 3 months into their Copilot journey, but they never benchmarked day one. So they don't even know, right?
Yeah.
So the sooner you can start collecting that data, and then be able to say, okay, we've done this for 3 months. What's the value? What's happening? What's changing here? I'll also mention too, the nice thing is that because this is your own to mess with, you can do whatever you want. I have a customer that we actually took some anecdotal data and slammed it up against their utilization data and told a much more compelling story about the value proposition. So you could actually say, hey, I'm saving a ton of time. And somebody said, well, how do we know? And we go, look, and that particular job family was working on average in 4 to 5 different applications with Copilot versus somebody who was not really using Copilot that much. They're saying, hey, we are only saving like an hour a week. They're only using 1 or 2 applications. So it does give us a little bit more dimensional feel for what's going on there. So that's, of course, up to you how you want to do that. And a use case for unmasking those user IDs that Habib just mentioned earlier. But gives you a little bit more opportunity to get a little more value out of the data you have.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I'm looking forward to deploying it and see what the data looks like. And as we've talked about, Dom, lots of exciting stuff going on in the data world. So there's a lot you can do with this data once it's in Fabric. So that's great.
Yeah, almost feels like we should do like a part 2, like once you've done it, tell me what you found, right?
Actually, that's an excellent idea. Let's do that. We'll give you a call once I got some data.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one of those things that's kind of interesting. Like once you start looking, you're like, oh, okay, some interesting stuff as you start to play around with it. So
very cool. Well, we'll cap it there. That was great, and special kudos because you have a picture of a winter scene in the background. Always great
right?
for us Canadians to see winter.
Always a fan. I keep trying to move further north as I get older, but my wife wants to
I'm
stay
opposite. I want to go
warmer.
south as I get older.
We just swap houses for the summer or for the winter. How about that? So,
all right, Dominic. Well, it was a
cool.
pleasure talking to you as usual, and thanks again for coming on and showing us this solution.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Definitely appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.